Welcome to Command Control Power, a weekly podcast hosted by 3 certified members of the Apple Consultants Network, drawing from over half a century of combined experience. We talk shop, interview vendors and colleagues, and share what we've learned while operating our technology consulting practices. This is Joe Saponari of CyMac, and my 2 co-hosts are Jerry Zigman of MacWorks and Sam Valencia of the HCS Technology Group. Hey everybody, it's our 9th anniversary. That's right, we've been recording Command Control Power every week since June 2013. We hope you've enjoyed it. On this special occasion of 9 years running, we're trying a little experiment for the next month or 2. We have a great community of supporters on Patreon, and we really want to show them how much we appreciate their support. So this summer, we're airing new shows every week in the private patron-only subscription. Here on the public show, we'll re-air a classic episode from our catalog of almost 500 episodes, along with the occasional new show. For the freshest content, a peek behind the scenes, and more candid conversation about running our businesses, dealing with clients, fixing tough technical issues, and everything else you love about Command Control Power, we invite you to join us on Patreon so you don't miss any of this great content. Go to commandcontrolpower.com and click support. Pledge monthly, and you can instantly subscribe to the weekly patron-only shows right in your favorite podcast app. Once again, to join us on Patreon and get the latest patron-only episodes, visit commandcontrolpower.com and click support. We hope to see you there, and thanks for listening. We have some follow-up from a couple weeks ago. We were talking about the pronunciation of Helvetica, the newer version of that font, I guess. And it turns out my client was right. It's Helvetica Neue, and that was courtesy of Gary Hustwit, the director of the Helvetica and Objectified documentaries, which are really great. You should watch those. They have, I think, at least the Objectified ones features Johnny Ive, talking about some Apple design stuff, but really well done documentaries. So Helvetica Neue, so you can sound knowledgeable when you're talking to clients.
Very geeky.
Yeah, so thanks to Gary for pointing it out on Twitter, and for Jerry for retweeting it.
He's been a favorite of mine for quite a while, and he has another movie called Urbanized, and something new as well. But just a neat guy to follow.
Nice.
Yeah. Something new, you said?
Something Noya.
Yeah, I was waiting for it.
Yes.
I didn't want to steal your joke.
Thank you.
He has a Noya documentary out. So, and another brief kind of thing. Thanks everybody who bought a shirt. Mostly that's Jerry's grandmother and
thanks Nana
and you guys. And Sam, was that your? No, it's Jerry's.
No.
Yeah.
I was saying thanks to Jerry's Nana.
Thanks to Jerry's Nana.
Thank you, Sam.
We're officially funded. Our shirts are being printed. The first run exclusive "Have You Tried Restarting Command Control Power" shirts. We ended up selling 11 of them. The original goal was 25. And Teespring actually sent me an email. Really kind of cool. I didn't know this was a possibility, but before the sale was going to close without being funded, they sent me an email saying, you have this one-time opportunity here to lower your original goal to 10 shirts, and therefore your shirt will be printed. So I said, let's do it. So I clicked a link, and it was done.
Nice.
So that was lucky.
Kim bought 2. Nice. Thanks, Kim.
Yeah, thanks, Kim.
Thank you, Kim. Daring Fireball should have these problems.
Yeah, really. God. Yeah, that's a great site. I mean, for the new ACN members out there, it took me, I think, maybe a year or 2 to like really discover that site and to just put it in the daily rotation. And it's a tab that's permanently loaded on all of my devices, and I'm refreshing it constantly throughout the day. So sorry, John, for killing your server. I'm sure you can afford it. But it's a great site, daringfireball.net. I think the .com works as well, but that's a staple of Apple news and the commentary.
Well, I'm following a lot of them lately on Twitter. I'm getting my Twitter going lately, and thanks, Jerry, for hooking me up.
Yeah, no, it's a great resource, and the more, like I said last week, the more followers you get, the more valuable it really becomes. It's a great place to gain knowledge, not necessarily to give it out, but if you give it out, you get a lot back too.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, we've actually been collecting followers in the last couple of weeks. It's it's one here, one there, but we were retweeted by a pretty major Apple News sort of, I don't know if it's like a tweet bot kind of thing or something, but
it's called like Apple retweet or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, you guys know the deal about that. I wasn't sure what the story was, but Jerry made a great post and they just retweeted it, so it went out to like a whole bunch of people. So, welcome new listeners and new ACN members. Thanks for tuning in and following the show. And if you haven't followed us yet on Twitter, jump on that. It's we're at CMD CTRL PWR. So look for us on Twitter.
We might have a new client, a new listener tonight from the client that I'm at right now in San Francisco. I told him all about it. He's like, "Oh, that's great. I'm going to listen in."
Nice.
Oh, that is great.
Very cool.
So, how do you get clients in San Francisco?
Yeah, it's actually an Apple professional services gig, so it's
okay, yeah,
kind of done through them. But
that's great.
I'm running into a snag there, and I was going to put it out there to see. I'm actually dealing with it after our podcast tonight to see if I can resolve it. But basically, they had an OD master 10.6 that we were going to export users and groups manually. And it's been a nightmare. It's been an all-day affair of trying to deal with major corruption in their Open Directory structure. So I've been dealing with that all day. And then we moved over to something called Passenger. Have you guys heard of Passenger?
Yeah, Passenger. I was just going to suggest that to you. Passenger is great.
Yeah, and I'm having a little bit of struggles with it. So I was like, going to throw it out there to the community of like, someone please help me with Passenger. But basically I was having some export issues. So Jerry, if you're good on it, I might hit you up afterwards and ask you a few questions.
Yeah, I mean, I could forward you the emails from the actual developer of that, and he's very, very responsive. So if you threw something out to him, he's very, very conscientious of making sure you're happy with his product. So don't hesitate to do that through his website. But I'll forward you, just some simple, because it's a little, it's a little less intuitive in trying to do an export than you would like. But his emails back to me helped, so I'll make sure I'll send those to you at the end of the show.
So how does this differ from the built-in functions? Is this like a backup and restore thing, or?
It's more about being able to also tweak it too. Like if you know how Workgroup Manager, for instance, can't export passwords. You can update an export to include passwords and then import that into your new structure, or modify user IDs and do all this stuff in the GUI interface that you wouldn't normally be able to do.
Okay.
But I've also found that it's helping with the corruption in this Open Directory issue, because a full-on Workgroup Manager export is bringing over all the corruption that was already there, and it's pulling it into the new one. So with Passenger, I'm selectively pulling out attributes that I need and trying to avoid whatever the problem is in that structure. It would be a whole show describing what's going on there, but Passenger's sort of saving my bacon if I can finish it off and figure it out.
And like Sam mentioned, it'll generate random passwords for you, and you'll have an exported file of that, and you could use that as the new master sort of list with passwords are on it. So if you've done that before, I have a question. Like basically, the concern there is they don't want to blanket a default password, even if it's chosen to reset at first login, because let's say you make everyone Apple, right? And then someone can hijack another user's account. Mm-hmm. So you have the ability to create like passwords with username and have you done that before, where you can basically generate autofill passwords for Passenger? I just had it generate, I think, 8-character length random passwords for me.
Okay, and then you can see that in clear text and give it out to people?
I imported it into Excel and just had a master sheet, and we gave it to everybody in the domain, and
that's cool. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for, basically, because we don't want to set up a blanket password and just say, everyone, your password's Apple.
Yeah, and the other thing is like you're saying, generating a password. It seems like whatever. I mean, unless like Jerry said, you automatically generate it randomly. whatever your convention is for generating a password, we're on to you guys. I mean, you encounter other consultants' handiwork in the field sometimes where, every user, it's like the three initials of the company name and like the year, or something like that, where, you think you're being clever, like the first user is not going to catch on, the second user is not going to catch on, but, the users will catch on to that. And they're going to realize that, okay, if this person's password gets reset, I have an opportunity here to like Sam said, hijack their account. I've even seen consultants use like a standard password across multiple clients, for example. I mean, that's just horrendous. There's
it's really scary.
Yeah.
That's absolutely.
So there's nothing like random passwords. And then, I mean, of course, I've done it in a one-off kind of scenario where somebody says, can you set up a new user on the server they're starting tomorrow morning? I'll go in and just generate a, summer 2012 password or something like that, but
I love that, by the way. That's so typical of a client that says, hey, I got someone starting today. You need to set them up.
Right. I told this happened a couple weeks ago. And I told Tim, this client called and said, they have a new user starting next week. And he was like shocked, about the amount of notice. We had a full week to plan, It's like,
yeah, that's a big deal.
Never happens that way. So, yeah.
Oh, before I forget, I got to give a shout out to my family because they're listening in from Connecticut. So hi, Jan, Alyssa, and Ethan.
Hey guys, it's great of them to all listen. I mean, I wonder how interesting the kids are going to find the show.
Yeah, I think Alyssa will find it intriguing. She'll probably have some technical questions for me afterwards.
That's pretty cool. It's like a day in the life. Bring your kids to work day kind of thing.
Oh, nice. She just posted on the feed. Hi, Dad. That's awesome.
Nice. Yeah, you got to heart that. I think somebody hearted it. Oh, Alan did. Nice. Thanks.
Nice. Thanks, Alan.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so I'll hit you up afterwards, Jerry, about Passenger if I have any additional questions.
Well, I'll just forward on to you everything that went back and forth for me. So you might find some of it useful because it was pretty descriptive and pretty just very easy to follow directions.
That's cool. I mean, that's what this is all about. Besides the people listening in, I told my client today, I was like, hey, I'm doing my podcast later. I'm going to post a question and see if anybody can help. And it's a good place for that kind of a forum.
Definitely. The idea of the passenger vendor, I guess is like a one-man show. The guy who developed it doing support as well. It would be cool to have a database of like really just like I don't know what you want to call them, but like gold vendors, like who. Obviously we're talking about Mike Bombick, I think last week or the week before in the backups show. Just how great, they tend to be with support over the years. SoftRaid, they're excellent with their email support. There's a few vendors like that where they're just really consistently really helpful through email or other means. So maybe we do a list of vendors like that. If anybody in the chat has any other vendors that have been really great, we'd love to hear about it.
That's a really cool idea, actually. I mean, sharing information like that is pretty cool. I mean, everyone talks about things like Disk Warrior and things along those lines, which are great tools. But if we could all share that stuff, we could all benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a great way to like give a little kickback to the vendors who go out of their way to really, like you said, they want you to be happy with their product because then you'll use it again, you'll recommend it. So it's really a good positive feedback loop.
Right. And by the way, Mac in Mind, MACINMIND.com. That's where you can find Passenger, and the developer's name, his name is Jay Lichtenauer. And Jay has some other apps as well on his website. But and I'm not sure exactly how I stumbled upon Passenger, but was very happy with the results. I've used it twice now, and it's gotten me out of some older, just exporting like Sam says, ODs. Mine weren't corrupted, but from legacy machines, OS 10.5 or 10.6.
It's interesting that you can work around that kind of open directory corruption. I mean, I've gotten to places where I've been stuck.
I didn't know that.
That can be a real bear to deal with. I had my own internal server for a while when I would, it was stuck on like 10.6.4 or something, and when I tried to do an upgrade. It would reboot, everything was fine, and then the open directory was just, the database was just killed. It just wouldn't. I forget what the problem was, but basically I got to a point where I just, instead of troubleshooting, I just left it at 10.6.4. I reverted to a clone and just kept it on that until I could redo it, essentially. So,
yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's what it was geared for, but basically by allowing me to cherry pick what I need, it helps me to avoid any bad stuff.
Yeah. Very cool.
But in terms of your upgrade issues, I've often found that upgrading OS X server can be a bit of a bear, and I'll choose to back up the Open Directory database, create a brand new server, and restore the database, or even do a manual export of users and groups. I mean, you do lose some things by doing things that way, but oftentimes with an upgrade, you bring along all the mess with you.
Yeah, you're talking major version upgrades, right?
Yes. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like 10.6 to 10.8 in your case, like you were saying.
Yeah, this was actually like 10.6.4 to 10.6.5 or 10.6.4 to 10.6.6. Just point updates were killing it, which I found very surprising. But of course, there's sometimes pretty major bug fixes or rewrites of certain areas, even in a point update like that.
Yeah.
I forget what the Apple reference for that is. I remember being at I think it was like an ACN business meeting or a session at Macworld or something where somebody was talking about, it was a representative from Apple talking about features that would be reserved for, like, I forget what they called it. I don't think they called it a major version upgrade, but it was like a, going 10.7 to 10.8 style. They have like a term for that and a way to classify those types of feature requests. Like, this is not going to happen, in the scope of like Mountain Lion. It's going to be a 10.9 or 10.10 or whatever the next one is feature. So internal reference for that. Curious what that is.
Now you're making me think.
Yeah, I have to go back to my notes. I used to take pretty copious notes of those things. It was an exciting time, when I was starting out, after maybe a year or two, I think I would go to Macworld, and it was really cool to be able to justify a business trip, out to a conference somewhere. And, these days, the equivalent to Macworld, I think for ACNs would be something like the MTC Plus classes that you recently attended, Sam, or what are some other ones? Like, I guess that's kind of rolled into advanced camp now, right?
Well, some of and the Mac Tech shows, of course.
Oh yeah, Mac Tech
conferences. Yep.
Right. Yeah, there's some great third-party conferences out there. I mean, of course, the Apple training is really top notch. But it's great to like just travel and get out there and meet some colleagues. That was a really exciting time to be, meeting actually with people from Apple. When you're starting out, you're independent. Maybe you're working in a small town somewhere. You're the local Apple guy, but to go and connect with people from the mothership, it's kind of a fun time. Especially when I would take that trip up to Cupertino. Did you guys ever do that at Macworld?
Not at Macworld, but
we would,
Cupertino rocks.
Yeah, they would do a bus from Macworld, for ACN members. I think it was like after the ACN business meeting or something like that. We'd jump in a bus and right up to Cupertino. They would keep special hours at the store, the official Apple corporate store there. Yeah, and we'd even get a discount. I think they gave us like a 20% discount or something like that.
What? You got 20%?
I think it was something like that. I remember buying a whole bunch of gear one year. Like,
I only got 15.
I'm actually drinking water out of my Apple coffee mug that I bought there one year right now. Yeah, maybe it was 15. I don't know.
Besides get that cool discount, I mean, it's the gear you could buy, like the clothing and stuff that has the Apple logo on it that you can't really find in most places.
Yeah, it's you can find it at that the Missing Byte. Have you guys gone there? Missingbyte.com. They have they resell this stuff. I literally think that the guy who runs the site like makes a trip out to Cupertino every once in a while and just like stocks up on this stuff because it's a lot of the stuff that's exclusive to the corporate Apple store there. Apple stationery. They have like watches and mugs and things, and even some really cool like vintage Think Different posters and other Apple marketing.
Right. That's where I've seen the post where it's more vintage stuff, but I didn't realize that they had newer.
The site is vintage too.
Yes, it's pretty vintage. Yeah. The Bondi blue buttons and things like that.
Yeah.
The aqua
kind of dig it though.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. Kind of a throwback.
Yeah, when I was at a client last week, they actually had a bunch of Apple rainbow stickers. They're like, "Hey, do you have any of these?" I'm like, "No." He's offering them up to me. I was like, "These are so cool."
That's really cool.
Well, you can get them at the Missing Byte, by the way.
Yeah, I see them right now. I'm looking at them.
They have a lot of cool stuff there. I'm tempted. No, I was gonna say I'm tempted to buy some of these posters. Every now and then I'll look at the site and see if they have any cool, like, Think Different posters or something. They're super expensive though for, I want to decorate my office, but it's just, I can't justify it. Like the Einstein one here is pretty cool, but it's like $400. So, but,
I can't pronounce the name. Mike, someone is asking if we wear ACN logo shirts on site. I do, depending on the visit. So, just about branding and stuff as we're talking about this stuff, especially if I'm going to a new client meeting or something, I'll definitely wear my branded shirt, or the first time I show up at a gig. But I don't wear them every day. I don't know. I guess some of that is about the logo, but also about dress code. How do you guys show up to clients? Is it all dependent on the type of client?
Yeah, actually, we have a series of questions. I think that's a question from Michael Reinhardt in the chat. Relatively new ACN. He had submitted some questions through email to Jerry.
Oh yeah, hey Michael.
Yeah, so we're gonna get to those as well. But personally, ever since I started, and I found the ACN logo shirts on the members site. Placed an order, I ordered a few, enough to last me a week, between washes, and I wore them just, religiously. I mean, it kind of has a double meaning in the Apple world, but
right.
They're great. It's great branding. I mean, that's like one of the best, most valuable components of the membership in the ACN is to be able to display that Apple logo proudly, legally.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Legally, yeah.
So those are really important. As well as we have a great vendor in Connecticut here on the shoreline, and I'll be happy to share it with you guys. Actually, let me see if I could come up with the website. But they'll do embroidery on just about anything. So you can go in there, and it's a little place, but they have stock shirts that are on the racks, and if you bring them some artwork, they'll create custom embroidery for you. So now they have, for a number of years, they've had my file. From the very first time I had them create something for me, and now I'll bring in dress shirts, I'll bring in short sleeve shirts, and so if I'm ever working with a client, I always have some branding, either the Apple shirts on or the ones that represent my company, and it's the only way I go out. So I mean, I don't badge a car. I don't have a wrap on my car. I don't have any decals in the back. So this is the way I represent the company. So I think it's a really important thing to do.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, definitely.
I find when I show up to clients with the Apple logo, they're like, "Oh, whoa!" Like all professional. They get blown away by just seeing the logo on your clothing.
Yeah, and people aren't sure, what your relationship is, and they kind of assume if you're wearing a professional-looking Apple logoed shirt, you may have some really significant affiliation with them. They don't know what the ACN is and that you're an independent consultant. They might look at you as on one end, hey, you're an employee of Apple or you're Apple corporate, and on the other end, they may think, oh, you're a guy from the Apple store. But somewhere in between is kind of the truth, and it really reinforces that affiliation with Apple, I think.
Yeah, you're an extension of them when you show up to the job site.
Yeah, and stopping at Starbucks in between, you get those questions from people, and you get random, when are they going to open a store up in Westport or something like that, or, and you strike up a conversation. Well, I do this for a living. I help people on site. I come to your home. Oh my God, I need somebody like you. It's like there's a lot of those conversations that happen out there in public. So,
always carry your business cards.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right. And if you haven't gotten the email, I think there's another round of shirts that you can order, and there's a cutoff date. Did you see that email come through?
You're talking about Apple shirts, not our shirts.
Apple
right?
shirts, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Mimi sent something out recently. They're doing another round of shirts, and you have to get your order in, and then I guess they get printed, embroidered or printed or whatever. I have to mention another vendor I've been really happy with is Queensboro, I think it's called. Queensboro. They're based down in I think it's North Carolina. They've been really good, really speedy, really reasonable pricing for Apple, not for Apple only, but for just in general custom logo shirts or embroidered shirts. So I like Jerry said, you put your logo on file with them, and you can just basically place an order whenever you want. It's queensboro.com. and basically really cheap but decent quality shirts. And I did a hat through them as well with my own company logo on it, which is pretty cool as well.
Can they run different colors for you as well?
Yeah, I believe they can do anything like that. I mean, the hat is 2 colors. It's blue and a white thread on a black hat. And then the ACN shirt is just, I always use a black shirt with white embroidery. But the quality's been really good, and they have a bigger variety of shirt styles than the ACN offers. So it's a good source of just custom shirts and really reasonable pricing.
Yeah, and one of the nice things, of course, you get something embroidered and it looks very neat and tailored. This local source that I mentioned, they're called Zeus, spelled Z-U-S-E, and their website is zeusonline.com. And what's really cool about them is, like I said, you can pretty much bring them anything you want. So let's say you went to a store and you found 5 multicolored shirts that were on sale, and you found that they were a good value. You could just go in and they would just be happy to do the embroidery. So they're not looking to sell you the shirt and the service. The other cool thing that I've done in the past, and I haven't done this in a few years, is I picked up for a couple of key clients, I believe they were hoodies from the guy who makes the tech, Scotty Vest. So I got some great Scotty Vest black hoodies, and I think I got them in the dead of summer when nobody was buying them, and got a really good deal, and then brought them to Zeus around the holidays and had them, put with the company logo and gave them to some key customers.
That's a cool idea. So just your own company logo without any Apple logo on those.
Well, I think when you start to incorporate the Apple logo, and again, I don't know how rigid they are on this, but you have to follow a lot of the graphic guidelines.
Yeah.
And so, you could probably do something and it could fly under the radar, but technically you're not supposed to add any of the Apple logo features, but your mileage may vary.
Yeah, in the research I've done, you're allowed to, use Apple's logo alongside your own logo, or on your, like your company signage, for example, or on your business card. But you're not allowed to make the Apple logo bigger than your own logo for obvious reasons. And there may be some kind of ratio there where it has to be at least less than 80% of the size or something like that. There's some logo usage, Apple logo usage guidelines, which you can, I think, find on their site. And through the ACN. But I've seen some consultants do some kind of like dual branding thing where you have, your own company logo, like maybe on the, left breast kind of area of the shirt. And then you have the Apple logo on the sleeve, for example. Or, I was curious what you guys thought, if anybody had any thoughts about how to do that in a really, nice looking way. Cause I'd love to have I don't have my own company logo on my shirts. I have just the Apple logo, which again reinforces the branding. But if there were a way to incorporate both in a clean way and legal way, that would be ideal, I think.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for you. I have one or the other as well. Like I have my company logo and then I have Apple shirts.
Right. And then Jerry, you mentioned the car wraps. I've always thought about doing, the back of my car would look pretty cool with like a nice Apple logo in the middle, like the startup screen or something, and then some company information, contact info. And then I've thought, I don't really want to draw attention to my car because sometimes there's a computer in it or other equipment, and so it's like you don't really want to brand it with Apple logos right and left. It's kind of like the way Apple ships their products. You see, the from address is AI, not Apple Inc. You don't want to draw any extra attention to that package to, for somebody who might be just a, opportunist.
That's true, I guess. I mean, the other lesson is don't leave a laptop in your car.
It's true. And if you do, use File Vault.
Very true.
My abridged story on that is I had a company URL in the back window for a few years, and one day someone didn't really like the way I was driving, and they found me through the URL, and it was pretty intense.
Wow. What? Wow.
Yeah. And so I, immediately that night, I never have had, I'm blanking out on what when you hide your domain, when people can't do a whois lookup.
Privacy. Yeah.
Right. And I think that very night I spent about $400 with GoDaddy making any sort of domains that I had with them. I think I have like 25 or 30 of different names and stuff like that, and making everything private. And I really took care not to make myself as visible on the internet, with a local address, and I was a little bit concerned.
So you have your like a PO box or something as your, do you have any address, listed? Or
there was an address listed on the website, and there was for a long time with Google Plus and things like that. And so for the most part, it's stripped away. I think if you look hard enough, you could find it. But this person who took issue with my driving said things. It just got really strange. It just sent emails saying, you're lucky I didn't have a gun in the car.
Wow.
And really crazy stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, and he was local, and I found out where he lived. And I was like one step away from going to the police.
Wow.
But
sheesh,
that's scary.
Yeah. So you always have to kind of like really think of these things. Sometimes if we're making ourselves visible in different ways on the internet, and driving around with our identities, and we're very, very accessible.
Yeah.
So
I just do what I do. I put Joe's logo on my car.
Yeah, it's you have to consider it. I mean, it's tempting to take advantage of that branding opportunity when you're driving around, between clients all day. Maybe getting business from people in the street, kind of thing. But that goes back to my whole theory about the quality of a referral from an existing client, for example, or even from a store, who you have a relationship with, versus like just the guy off the street referral where somebody finds you, because they see your car, or they find you through Google, for example, rather than through the normal means. I feel like those referrals are lower quality typically. So maybe it's not really that big of a missed opportunity. That's just sort of my attitude.
I don't think it. I'm sorry, Sam.
No, go ahead.
I don't. Yeah, no, I don't think it. I don't think it is. And I think for the amount of time that I had badging on the car, and it was very visible. It was like a URL that covered the whole back window. It didn't block my vision, right. But it was white, and I believe there was an Apple logo incorporated in it, and it was nice. It was very nicely done, and it wasn't a big deal to pull it off, and it didn't. I don't think I got that much traffic off of it.
Yeah, it's probably like you said, it's better safe than sorry in a case like that, where you're worried somebody's gonna find you or hunt you down like that. That's just crazy. But
that is a little nuts.
Yeah. Wow.
I debated whether I would share that on mic, but.
Well, you did now.
Yeah.
Wow.
What were you going to say, Joe?
So I had a thought, and it left me. So
it left your mind.
This is why people tune in.
Is this the show? No. Go ahead, Jerry.
I was just going to point our direction towards Michael Reinhardt, who emailed us earlier this week, or actually today, and I came up with some very, very good questions. He's new to being an Apple ACN, and so I figured we would take a look at what he asked and set him up and tee him off.
Yeah. And thanks, Michael, for listening and being in the chat, and everybody else who's in the chat. We're doing kind of a focus here on welcoming new members. Michael found the show and recently joined the ACN, and he had some immediate feedback about some questions for us, like why is there a listing for workshops happening in December 2012 on the ACN member page? You log into the member page and you're confronted with basically stale information. I don't know how much you guys go to the ACN portal anymore, but I sort of rarely go, so I hadn't really noticed that. I mean, I kind of vaguely remember it being out of date quite often. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of silly. You go in and it's stale info, old branding, old dates for things, and so it's a little bit disorienting. He's thinking, is that like a typo? I mean, what's the deal with this? He was wondering where's there an active discussion forum for ACN members? So clearly that's not promoted very well, as effectively as it could be on the ACN page. And a couple other sort of basic introductory questions we'll get to. But I think to answer the first part, some news came out today. Someone posted this on the ACN alumni list. So this is to answer your question about active discussions. This is a pretty active discussion list through Google Groups. The name is ACN alumni, ACN-alumni, and I think you can find it through Google Groups, and you send a request to join. And I think it's Donnie Hornstein. Is that who's in charge? Yeah, and he'll look you up and approve you for membership in the ACN alumni group, and it's pretty active there. And somebody happened to post today. I think it was Phil Goodman posted on the ACN alumni list that Francois Daumard, formerly with Microsoft for 12 years, had joined Apple a few years ago, maybe a couple of years ago, to work in the consultants network, kind of channel relations in general. He was big, I guess, getting started in the what they used to call mobility technical competency, now called, I think, Mobile Technology Competency, the MTC training. He was very active in getting that set up and kind of relating to members and ACNs, getting them certified, drawing from his years of experience with Microsoft channel. He just left Apple a couple of weeks ago, it sounds like, and he went to Fiberlink. Fiberlink makes Mass 360, which we talked about on the show, I think, that where Sam was live from the channel camp. And Francois was very active in the ACN relating to members. And I think maybe this is related. Maybe, after he left, some of this information stopped being updated as often as it should have been.
Well, he's only been on board 2 weeks, right? He's only been with them for 2 weeks, according to the article that I read. And so, this old stale information goes back to December.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's older than it predates his leaving, unless he was, on the way out for a while, so to speak. But
I'm sorry, Sam, for interrupting twice.
That's fine. I'm used to it. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Yeah, no, those dates are definitely old, and they've been there for a while. So it is kind of interesting there. But Francois was definitely in charge of building up the channel as much as he has. He did a lot to build the channel and brought a lot of consultants into the mix. Some people have mixed feelings about that, bringing so many other consultants into the mix, but he built up the mobility channel a lot as well.
Yeah, like for example, there's a path for non-Apple, consultants to achieve MTC training and a certification.
Right.
And so you can come with a Windows background and pass a couple of Apple, specific classes and attend MTC training and get the MTC certification. So it's not exclusive to ACNs. And I think that has some people, a little concerned, or at least it did initially when we started to sort of welcome, our arch rivals in the Windows world into the mix. But he was really great. I mean, Francois was just on the ball. When I first was looking at MTC training, I guess it was a couple of years ago now, or right around the beginning. He was just like almost relentless with following up with like, did you schedule it yet? Did you schedule it yet? Did you take the test yet?
Yeah.
Just like,
that sounds about right.
Yeah. I mean, he was but it was great. I mean, it was really, really good, great at follow up and great at building the channel. So, I think he really benefited Apple.
And Kim, absolutely. I think he was, valuable to us. And Kim tells us that the old site is being redone, and she was told of his departure at last month's advisory meeting. So, it was definitely in the wind. And Sam, you were saying you were aware of it a little bit earlier than most.
Was I saying that? I'm not sure.
Possibly, yeah. Yeah, but it will be sad. It's sad to see him go. And, certainly we want the love to continue for the ACN network. So,
yeah, having Mimi as part of the program is also big, and they work together to do a lot of stuff. So Mimi's always been a great resource for us too.
Yeah, Mimi's been really consistently great, and she's been there for a number of years as well. I think almost as long as I've been a member, she's been there, or maybe a few years into me being a member, she started. There's always some concern that the program is going to fizzle out in some way, or that Apple's just going to say, one day Tim Cook's going to like look at the balance sheet and say, what is this ACN thing? What? Who are these people? Just can we kill that? Or something. Like we're giving these people these. I won't mention the percentage discount they get. 4 times a year. Why are we doing that? Just be off with them. So, but I don't know if that's a real actual concern or not. I mean, I tend to think that there's a real need for some of the services we provide, some affiliation, whether it's weak or strong ties with Apple, and specifically on-site service. And Sam, maybe you can speak more to the on-site or the Apple professional services gig you're working on. Not specifically this gig, but just sort of that general method of working with Apple and how that relates to the ACN.
Yeah, I mean, it's been an interesting experience. Last week I was actually in Iowa, which is also a new place for me. I've never been there before. I'm not sure if anyone in the community is from or living in Iowa. I didn't visit any of the bigger cities there, so I do have to say there was a lot of corn. And and I'm not joking at all. It was about 40 miles from the Waterloo airport to my hotel, and it was all cornfields on either side of me the entire way. But in terms of APS or Apple Professional Services, you're basically going in as a representative of Apple and working as their arm, so to speak. And you have certain guidelines and rules to follow, but it also is an interesting way to get new clients and kind of build who you are out there too. You're not coming in as your company though. You're coming in as Apple. That's one thing to point out, is that it's a difference as opposed to handing out your business card and saying this is what we do as a company. But I'm relatively new to it in terms of going out there in the field. But it's been very cool in terms of being able to travel and see different cities and work with a host of different types of companies and educational clients and rolling out iOS devices. It's been very cool.
So obviously these tend to be larger clients, corporate enterprise type clients where Apple corporate has put together some kind of deal, whether it's a hardware purchase along with some kind of deployment solution. And is that right? And they're sort of including services along with services and support along with the hardware sale. And you're sort of flying it as like you said, an extension of Apple, doing the work that you set out to do, basically representing Apple specifically. Right.
But it gives you a chance to, I think, have a lot of new experiences in terms of the types of jobs you might not otherwise get a chance to do. I'm doing some cool stuff at different locations that are just maybe your local clientele doesn't have that sort of need, and you want to get your hands on that stuff, but you don't necessarily have the opportunity to. So that's where I think it's been kind of cool for me.
And then do you have any ongoing relationship with the client after the initial sort of deal is up, or?
Not on a company level. If it has to go up a food chain and stuff like that. So you're not helping them out after the fact is anything to do with your company. It has to go through Apple channels if there's follow-up or on-site needed or anything like that.
Interesting.
But yeah, it is kind of an interesting scenario on how it works. But I've found it to just be fulfilling in that, like I said, I've gotten to do some cool things that I haven't had a chance to do at home. And I'm in San Francisco. It's awesome.
And I would imagine, certainly you have to have, a certain level of achievement, Sam. It's not like anybody can throw their ring in the hat and get called up by Apple to go out and pinch hit for them. So do you want to just briefly tell people how, if in fact, they...
That one is a little bit of a, I don't know, crapshoot for me. I mean, I work a lot with Craig Cohen at HCS, and Craig has been tireless in working with Apple on a lot of things. And Craig and I both, have authored some stuff, and just he pushes really hard for that stuff. So in a way, I've been, I guess you could say, riding that coattail. Like going along with it and just saying, yeah, I'm in for these types of things. So I think really it's about making contacts at Apple and going to the events. So just as throwing back a few years, that's what basically had to be done, is just, Joe, you mentioned it, going to these channel camps and doing stuff like that. You meet Apple people, you meet Apple professionals, and you stay in their mind. If you go to those not a lot and you interact with them, you're remembered. And over time, you kind of build a reputation as well. Like, the other day we talked about reviews. So all of this kind of comes together and builds a reputation for who you are. And then, and as Kim is mentioning on here, FaceTime with a lot of these people. And once you get in there, it's almost like you're someone that's a go-to person out over some time. But it definitely takes a lot of FaceTime, for sure.
Certainly, but you've achieved a certain level of distinction. You're an Apple trainer, and so you're known within the community. So,
I guess there's that too. Yeah, there's that too. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think that's great. I mean, it's nice to know that, for people who really are vigilant, that there are these opportunities that are out there, and you just have to, like you said, distinguish yourself, or maybe you didn't say that, I said it, and, participate and get as much training as you possibly can. Now, I just have one quick question, not to focus on this too deeply, but when you go out most of the time, Sam, is it more for like a turnkey operation where they've sold a system and you sort of help to bring it online, or is it sometimes where you're actually called in to troubleshoot a very difficult problem?
No, it's mostly, at least from what I've seen. I can't speak to everyone else, but mostly turnkey, I guess you could say, where there's a package deal going together with equipment that's been sold, and it needs to be set up and configured and all that stuff. Not like, hey, there's a major problem, you got to come in and resolve this.
Right, and you're the point man. You're basically in there to make it happen.
I can create major problems, but I don't come in to resolve them.
Is Apple, sort of designing and developing the proposed solution, and you sort of go in and you execute it, or are they engaging you in the process of recommending or designing that solution from the start?
It's mostly the solution is created beforehand, but then once I interact, it might get altered based on interaction with the client. Mm-hmm. So you initially make contact and talk with them and see what's going on. And if after that conversation you find it's a little bit different than what was originally scoped, then you kind of throw your input in to possibly adjust that whole aspect of it.
And do you have just as much flexibility as you have with your own, company interactions with clients, where you might recommend, third-party solutions as opposed to Apple, native solutions?
Within reason. Some things require approval, but yeah, I mean, you have some flexibility there, of course, based on your experience. Like Joe or Jerry, you guys might have had something. We just talked about Passenger. Jerry has experience with that. So you might say, coming into it, I have this application that might be really good to help us resolve this issue. So yeah, within reason, absolutely.
Yeah, you're obviously not going to go in there and and tell the client, gee, I wouldn't touch Profile Manager with a 10-foot pole, or something like that.
Yeah, that would probably equal bad for me.
Right. So it's going to be your last APS gig, I guess. So it's an interesting, I've always wondered about that. I'd heard, about APS a while back, and, I've always been curious about it. It seems like a little bit of, like you said, there isn't really much information out there. They kind of have to invite you. There isn't really an opportunity to apply and sort of move up and get involved in that arena without, like you said, sort of making a name for yourself or somehow building a reputation and some visibility, making yourself a desirable candidate for that.
Yeah, and Joe, you and I have talked in the past, but that's what I credit Craig with a lot of, is just being tireless about that. And some of us don't always have those resources, I mean, we're tending to our own businesses here. Right. And to be able to fly out to Channel Camp every 6 months or Macworld or this or that, it's not easy on the pocket.
Right.
So it's not something that's easy to do for just anybody, I guess. And I've been fortunate there.
Right.
Sorry if this speaking. Yeah,
no, that's great. That's very informative. So, Michael, one of the questions that he presented to us was how, as a new ACN, how do you stay in the loop? So we've already mentioned the ACN alumni list. Certainly listening to a podcast like this, I think our desire to do this was to create a little bit more of a sense of community with the ACN network and maybe have just some sort of a connection to the network on an ongoing basis. Anybody else have any other ideas of course, attending the conferences, Mac Tech, conference, maybe outside of the Apple's, ecosystem, but still very important.
Well, and as far as a active discussion list, there is an Apple sanctioned discussion list, which used to be a mailing list that you'd get through the Apple the consultants page, which recently was changed over to be a special discussion board in the in the realm of discussions.apple.com. I think that's the right URL. Which you have to apply to have access to. So just by being an ACN member, you're not automatically enrolled in the ACN discussion lists. You do have to go through the ACN member portal and kind of like spend about 20 minutes trying to find the link and registering, and then maybe not hearing back, because that happened to me. I mean, before we started this podcast, I found the link. I went through the process to apply and choosing a name and all this stuff. And you basically have to like send your username that you use for the Apple discussion forum to you put it in this form basically, and you're sending it to probably somebody in who's managing the ACN program to approve you for access to the ACN discussion list. They have to sort of manually do that. At least that's the impression I get. And I did that, and I haven't followed up, but I haven't heard anything back. So for all I know, I'm able to log in now. I'm not really sure. But I just never heard a response. So it's a little bit of a black box. It's got some negative feedback. I can't speak to it because I haven't used it. But it's not a mailing list. It's a discussion forum. So it's not as effective if you're on site with a client and you want to just fire off an email to your colleagues with a question from the field. The ACN alumni list is great for that because you can very easily just email the group and you'll get responses. If you have the opportunity, you've got a laptop in front of you or an iPad or something, and a way to log into the discussion list on Apple's site, and you go to the ACN forum and you submit your question there. You can then follow it, I guess, and you can get email updates that way. But it's not the same as what we always had, and I think that a lot of people were sort of disappointed about that.
Alan has posted detailed instructions on how to sign up for the listserv, and we could put those in our show notes for the ACN list discussions.
So Joe, you're talking about that discussions and how a lot of people have kind of geared towards the Google group, right?
Yeah, seems to be.
That is one thing you are. I'm jealous of how active you are on that thing.
I didn't feel like I was even over that active. I certainly wasn't as active in the old list. There were a lot of other members, or let's say a few members who had probably like, what is the rule? Like 20% of the members had like 80% of the posts or something like that. But there were a few members that were kind of really dominant, who'd respond to every single question with an answer, which was great in a lot of cases. And in other cases, I think they drowned out the masses. But I'd certainly chime in if I had an answer. And of course, it's always okay to speak up if you have a question. Although there's always the risk you're going to get publicly shamed. I know. And Jerry may have a story about that. But it's tough because you have these. It's email communication, so it's always subject to misinterpretation. People make assumptions, and there's always a risk of that. But it never hurts to be active in those public forums. Also, again, just to sort of promote your own brand and to be visible in the community. So I encourage new members to jump in there and post their questions, and better yet, try to answer some questions too.
And be nice.
Yeah, it'd be nice. Everybody just try to get along. We do cooperate more than we compete, as we've said repeatedly on the show. So,
well, one thing that you posted not too long ago was about the iTunes backup of the iPhone and how it stores the information, the passwords that wouldn't normally be stored in iCloud. Yeah. I thought that was a pretty big one that a lot of people perked up about. I thought. And
I think I actually found that out through my colleagues. I mean, I didn't do the testing and sort of realize that myself. I may have come across it on a website somewhere or something like that, but there's a pretty good chance I actually heard about it through the list. So, it never hurts to chime in with an answer that you read last week from someone else, and say, I think this answer was posted last week, but such and such. In other words, it's not like I'm only posting, my own unique information or something like that. that was a tip that happened to be relevant in that case, and it's a useful bit of knowledge. And that's really the power that comes from the sharing information in a community, is just being able to help somebody in an immediate way when somebody needs an answer.
And for those who didn't hear what the tip was, Joe, it was if you select to encrypt your password backup to iCloud or your data to iCloud for your iPhone or your iPad, then when you check off or when you select encryption, it'll also store your email passwords.
Yeah, actually, it has to do with the iTunes backups of the iPhones and other iOS devices. If obviously when you plug a device into iTunes and you sync it and it backs up, you've got a backup stored locally on the computer. If you choose the checkbox in iTunes to encrypt the local backups, you choose a password when you check that box, and you can optionally store it in the keychain. There's a subtle difference in the way the backup happens, but it will actually back up, I think, most of the keychain, if not all of the keychain, saved passwords in the iPhone or iOS device. It'll save them in the encrypted backup on the machine that you're backing up to, so that when you restore from a backup, you can avoid having to re-enter all those passwords, at least most of them. And I don't know if there's an exact, if that's documented anywhere, but there's an Apple Knowledge Base article about it that someone else pointed out in the ACN alumni list, that has kind of an aside in one of the bullet points in the discussion about iPhone, iPod Touch backups, about what happens, what gets backed up, and it gives a little bit of a detail about passwords. Some passwords will be backed up if you choose that checkbox to encrypt the backups. So it's a useful bit of info, because you can, some clients have a lot of saved passwords, a lot of accounts, a lot of little custom things, and it can be a real pain to go down that checklist when you restore an iPhone from a backup. For example, if somebody picks up a new iPhone and they want to get back up and running, you can restore from backup, and then you've got to test all their email accounts and test their calendar syncing and their contact syncing, and make sure everything's working. But you can save a lot of time if you just encrypt that backup beforehand, and you can do that on a previously unencrypted backup before you restore the backup to the new device. You can go in and connect the old device, check the box to encrypt the backups, and it'll run another full backup, but now you've got your password saved.
Well done, sir.
So,
and do you know if in fact it's backed up to, when it's backed up to iCloud, if you choose that, if it's going to store the passwords as well?
I don't think you have any control about the iCloud backups, and that's one reason I've been reluctant to recommend clients use the iCloud backup, although I've been changing my recommendation on that, because I don't think you really have any granular options there. It's sort of just like, do you want to back up or not to iCloud? And, of course, somewhat paradoxically, if you back up to iCloud, the local backup is disabled. I mean, wouldn't it be nice if you could turn on the iCloud backup option and also continue backing up locally? But it turns off the local backup. So if you've been backing up using iTunes, and whether you've got the encrypted option set, that stops happening when you turn on the iCloud backup. And I mean, I have to assume that there's some level of encryption in the iCloud backup, but like anything Apple does, it's a black box. So I've sort of avoided using it myself, because I don't really know whether my information is being stored securely on Apple's servers or not.
Right. Sure it is.
Well, I mean, it probably is, but it might be, what is it, encrypted with the passcode or something? I mean, so, well, of course it's encrypted. It's, secured using your iCloud password and things like that. But I just don't know how that encryption works, so it's not as visible.
No, I'm just busting chops. Yeah, I hear you there. I mean, you don't see the end result, whereas you know how to control it on the iTunes side.
Yeah, and like we've talked about, we have access to the local data. I mean, you can browse those backups using Phone View or something like that, and get at the raw data. And so if you do have some kind of corruption, in a backup, you have at least ways around that in some cases. And that's probably less of an issue. That used to be, I think, that used to happen more often, where restores would fail early on, but not so much anymore.
Hey, I wanted to derail you for a second and talk about something. Apple Remote Desktop. So I don't know if any of you guys, either you guys or any of you people listening have dealt with App Remote Desktop and trying to get directory accounts or directory groups to be able to authenticate to a local machine for ARD. Have you guys ever had to deal with that in the past?
I'm not sure I'm following.
So basically, you know how you can turn on remote management on the Mac and say, okay, these users are allowed to observe, control, report, and all that stuff?
I know what you're talking about, yeah.
And you don't have an option of adding a directory admin or, a directory group, right? Through the GUI.
Yeah. Well, what I've noticed is, like in other words, only local users can.
Bingo.
Yeah. I've noticed that. Yeah, I don't know any way around that. That's a good point. Is that still the case with Mountain Lion? I haven't checked that recently.
Well, here's the deal. I mean, in the past, there was a way you could create a custom client installer in App Remote Desktop and basically say allow directory authentication. And that hasn't really worked right, at least from what I've seen and documentation I've looked up. And then there was a command you could run, which was called the kickstart command in ARD to allow directory admins and then specify which groups or allow directory authentication and specify which groups could authenticate. And the interesting thing is in recent releases, I guess, that some of that command is just completely missing from Kickstart. Ooh. So I'm just bringing it up only because I dealt with this. I was banging my head against the wall about it last week. And I found a great site. I just have to look it up and find it. But I found a great site that detailed how to make it happen. And I tested it and it worked. And I was like, it was literally 3 a.m, as I tend to do. And I'm jumping around in my kitchen just going nuts, going, it worked.
The fist pump.
But yeah, literally. I mean, it's funny because there's a big window looking in my house. And if people see me at 3 a.m, just, going nuts, yes, I got it to work. But, I was curious because, I mean, we have some live listeners, obviously, and people that might listen to it in the podcast. And I came up with a solution that works for me, but I was also curious to find out, anybody out there that if they've had experience with that or what they've seen in the latest versions of the OS and ARD, because it was a pain for me.
With ARD, I would just be happy if I could get it to consistently show the status correctly. I mean, have you guys seen this one? I don't know if it's in the recent version or if it's specific to the App Store download or if it's just something in my machine, but it's one of these weird issues where there's no rhyme or reason to it. Like if I launch Apple Remote Desktop, I see my list of all computers, and they will start off with the sort of dark gray icon, showing that the machines are offline. And then some of them, I guess, will have like a light blue icon, and then of course there's the dark blue icon for the machines that are available, and then you have a status like idle or available or whatever. None of the status icons work properly, like probably 80% of the time that I launch ARD. So what I end up doing is when it works, it's really consistent and it keeps working through through sleep cycles, through like just leaving it running for days on end. The status was working properly, and then I'll quit and reopen it, and it won't work, and the status never updates. And then I'll quit and reopen it, and maybe on the 5th try, it'll show the status correctly. So there's nothing, really? Yeah, there's like no consistency to it, and it's one of these like I just have no idea like where to troubleshoot that. So I was curious. I posted to the list a while back, and I didn't get any responses, but it may just be peculiar to my machine. But it happened when I think I had to. I don't know if I installed an update or the Mac App Store version of ARD, and that started happening. So
now I've seen that happen consistently right through different versions of it. How about when you tap on a entry in Scanner, a new Scanner entry or one that's pre-existing and it doesn't show up for a while, and then you have to hit the refresh button a few times, and then the entry does finally show up in the window. Have you seen that?
I've seen stuff like that. I've seen it where you double click like a machine to control it or observe it, and it will like a machine you haven't yet entered the credentials for, and it'll prompt for the credentials, but the window will appear and disappear really quickly.
No, I'll like tap on a Scanner entry, and there'll be nothing in the window right next to it. Looking at that one specifically, and then it'll do a refresh a couple times. And then all of a sudden, the machine will show up. Yeah.
What's the selector? Is it like network range or bonjour, or like, well, how are you?
Like a network address, like a specific static IP, a WAN IP.
I see. So you'll look for that IP in the scanner, and then it doesn't appear on the list, and then you refresh a few times, and it will pop up.
There'll be an entry, a scanner entry.
So it'll be in the list there.
In the list, right? Yeah. And the window right next to it, which would show the machine typically.
I see. Yeah.
It's completely empty.
Okay.
And then it takes a few, like 30 seconds, and the refresh will run for a little while, and then all of a sudden the static IP will just magically show up. So I've seen that as well, which is pretty bizarre.
Yeah, I'm trying to control Jerry's machine right now and I'm having trouble.
Does that work across subnets, Sam? Maybe from a hotel?
Did you change your password, Jerry?
Oh, I think his IP address changed. Sam, I'll send it to you.
Nice.
The other one that's popped up on the ACN list a bunch of times is something I've been dealing with on a couple servers. Headless machines, right? Where you reconnect to them and they show a black screen, or if you're lucky, you'll see something like you'll see a couple squares that have refreshed. Like a couple little what look like JPEG kind of like blocks or something like that. And if you're lucky, you can grab the handle on a window and sort of move it around, or if you're in the Finder, you can sort of drag a selection in the desktop, and it'll sometimes like just redraw the whole screen if you're really lucky. And then people are talking about well, you got to stick a resistor into a VGA adapter and then stick it. It's like, what? Are you kidding me? Like, this is Apple stuff. Like, this is Apple's, like it's Apple all the way down. It's a headless Mac Mini controlled by ARD on the local network. I mean, give me a break.
It's so embarrassing when you're there in an office with one of the clients and you've just remoted into their server. Well, let's take a look at the server and see what it's doing. And you do that, and there's just these big black chunks of blocks, and you have to open up a new Finder window and just like you said, Joe, just drag it around to have it like clean the windshield or something like that.
Exactly.
and then the client's like they're not saying anything, and you just have to say, this happens on all my installs.
Yeah.
Bow your head in defeat.
Right. It's just, it is embarrassing. It reminds me of Windows stuff. Like, you see stuff like that on Windows. I don't know. I'm speaking as a obviously like Mac, Apple biased guy. I see stuff like that on Windows, and it's just like, I blame Microsoft. I'm like, this is ridiculous. If I had to deal with this every day, I'd just quit my job. I mean, it's just horrible. It's like amateur hour, and then we see those things on a Mac, and we just like, I don't know, I have blinders. Like, I deal with it. It's frustrating, but I don't really blame, I don't find myself like blaming Apple so much,
You are biased.
Yeah, really. I have to like correct that,
Yeah, that's, the whole black screen thing. I just dealt with that today, literally today. I was there, we had it plugged into a monitor, and then we were remoting in, and we had disconnected it from the monitor because we didn't need it anymore. And as soon as I remote in, it's all black, and I'm trying to do. Who was that? Joe or Jerry that described windshield wiper? That was pretty good.
That was good, Jerry. Yeah,
that was pretty good, because that's basically what I'm doing is cleaning the screen.
Right.
And I'm like, I'm sorry, man. Just I'm apologizing.
That is just ridiculous. Really, it's just embarrassing.
And there's no way you can explain it to the client with it. There's not even a story that you can concoct that would even seem logical that could explain away why it's happening.
Yeah.
Except, it just does that from time to time.
Yeah. It's really funny. Yeah. So, let's. So does that kind of does that answer your question, Sam? I think it was completely different. But,
not at all. But thank you.
Okay. Keep trying. Maybe next week.
I put it out there. I'm going to see if anyone comes back with anything.
Yeah. So that'd be great. We'd love to follow up on that. So if anybody has any thoughts on that, and you're not in the chat right now, send us an email or get to the website and send us some feedback about that, and we'll talk about it next week.
Otherwise, I'll post it to the Google group. But I'd like to see what our group comes back with.
Yeah. So for the live listeners, we've been at this for a little bit over an hour now, and we've gotten about halfway through our sort of welcome new members show, inspired by Michael Reinhardt's questions here. So I'd love to continue with that and maybe split this up into like a two-parter. So if you guys are listening to the pre-recorded show, look for part 2 next week. But for the live listeners, we're gonna, I think, continue. Is that cool with you guys?
Yeah, no,
That is cool with me.
I would love to go long.
Cool.
Jerry does his voices of customers of all kinds.
Am I on the cloud?
Joe spins